joining in. We will. Okay. So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to come to our research break today, which is about strategies to improve hydration among older adults. So to begin, I would like to open the space with a land acknowledgement. So the Schlegel-UW Research Institute for Aging, or RIA, acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of the Attawandaron, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. The RIA is situated on the Haldeman Tract, the land promised to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. So my name is Kyla English-Lease, and I am a project officer at the Schlegel-UW Research Institute for Aging. And today I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Heather Keller. Heather is the Schlegel Research Chair in Nutrition and Aging at the University of Waterloo and the RIA, and is leading studies on a number of topics, including hydration and fluid intake among older adults. We are excited to have Heather join us today. We are going to have about a 20-minute presentation followed by about 10 minutes of questions. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. So you will notice at the bottom of your screens that there is a little closed captioning or CC button. So if you would like to enable subtitles, you can click on that and that should enable those for you. And if you are having any technical issues today, please know that we are recording the webinar and the recording will be available to you probably by early next week. We will send it out by email and it will also be available on our website. You will also notice at the bottom of your screens that you have access to the chat function as well as the Q&A. So you're more than welcome to use the chat if you want to provide comments or feedback on what you're hearing, but we encourage you to please use the Q&A function for any questions you have. And my colleague Ali will be monitoring that Q&A and we'll be asking those questions at the end. So now I would once again like to welcome Heather and turn it over to her.
Thanks very much, Kyla. So it's my pleasure to be here. As a registered dietitian, hydration is an important aspect of the care that I provide to older adults and the research that I do. So today we'll be talking about why hydration is important, what is a good goal for fluid intake, what contributes to fluid intake, why we don't drink enough, and then we'll talk about some research-based strategies to support fluid intake. And finally, end off with some of the research that I'm doing as part of my role as a Schlegel Research Chair in Nutrition and Aging. So first off, why is hydration important? Well, hydration is the process of taking up water into the body. Approximately 50 to 75% of our body is water. So obviously renewing that water, that source constantly is key to keeping our body healthy. It is actually considered an essential nutrient, such as similar to things like vitamins and minerals and protein. So it's really important that we attain enough water on a daily basis. Water is involved in every body process that we have. It transports nutrients and chemicals and waste and medications. It regulates our body in terms of temperature and helps our tissues and wounds to heal, and also lubricates our joints, our gut, and our skin. How well hydrated we are can change rapidly, as you may know. On a daily basis, we need to be renewing our fluid intake to basically address what we excrete in terms of our urine or through sweat or through our gut. What can happen if you're not sufficiently hydrated? Well, you'll feel weak, you'll lack energy, you'll be dizzy and lightheaded potentially, you might even fall. Constipation is a common complaint of people that are dehydrated or are what we call just subclinically dehydrated. They're not so dehydrated that they lead to a fall, but they constipation. May feel confused or unable to think clearly, and they can have a negative mood. So how much do we need to drink? Well, this is actually rather individual. It really depends on your body size and also how much you exercise or how much you consume in terms of high fluid foods. So it's really hard for us to say exactly that you should consume this amount of fluid per day. Our thirst actually regulates how much we should drink. And so some people are thirsty. Sometimes there's medications that they're using, or there might be just one of those individuals that sweat a lot, for example. So always use thirst as your guide to how much you should be drinking. The challenge is that as we age, that thirst drive actually decreases. There's some metabolic changes in our body, which mean we don't actually get thirsty as readily when we're losing hydration in our body. If you're not thirsty, you're not sensing that you're thirsty, you can also monitor how much urine you're putting out on a daily basis, the frequency of going to the washroom, as well as the volume. In general, we recommend 6 to 8 cups per day of fluid, which is about 1,500 to 2,000 mils. There's something called the dietary reference intake, which is basically recommendations for attaining good health through nutrition. And they recommend just under 3 liters for women and 3 liters for men a day for fluid. That may seem like a lot, but this actually includes fluid from food as well. So 20 to 40% of the food we eat 20 to 40% of the hydration or water we get from our diet actually comes from food. Remember that if it's hot weather, if we're exercising, or we're sick and losing fluid through vomiting or diarrhea, for example, it's extremely important to stay hydrated. So drinking as much as you can. It's also important to note you can actually drink too much. When we drink too much, we actually reduce or lower the level of electrolytes in our body, and things do not work as well as they should. You actually see similar symptoms to that of dehydration, specifically dizziness and confusion. Some health conditions, however, also require us to limit our fluid intake, such as congestive heart failure or kidney disease. So it's always important to follow the specific advice of your healthcare professional, either a dietitian like myself or your physician or nurse practitioner. So what counts as fluid? Water counts for sure, but also coffee and tea, juice or soft drinks, something like a smoothie or a milkshake, or milk, soy beverage, other alternatives to fluid milk. They all would count. What doesn't count is alcoholic beverages. As I indicated, much of our fluid can come from high fluid containing foods. These are some examples here on the slide. Obviously, broth and soups would be a high amount of fluid. They're about 90% water or more. Yogurt, though, is actually quite high in fluid, 81% water. Of course, a Greek yogurt is more dense than a non-Greek yogurt, so there'll be less fluid in a Greek yogurt. Fruit contains a lot of fluid. Think about oranges, for example, or apples, grapes, lots of fluid in those foods. Cottage cheese is also about 80% water. Pudding contains about 70%, ice cream 55 to 60%, and vegetables can be 85 to 96% depending on the vegetable. So obviously, foods can be a very good source of fluid. Why don't we drink enough? Well, there's been a variety of research around this with respect to seniors care specifically, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But in general, if we think about our own lives and throughout our life, things that we've noticed about living when we don't have fluid available. I'll give you an example here. We've gotten rid of a lot of the fountains these days, especially because of COVID-19. They're blocked off or not being used in some shape or form. They're turned off. So that affects our access to fluid. So you can imagine if you're someone who doesn't carry around a water bottle and you used to rely on fountains to get your fluid during the day or when you're in a mall or another place like that, public space, you now no longer have access to that fluid. It's also a habit. We can create habits to drink water or to not drink water, quite frankly, or other fluids. We sometimes aren't aware of how much we're drinking. And we'll talk about some strategies in just a moment as well about how to become more aware of what we're drinking. We commonly ignore our thirst signals. We might not realize, our throat is feeling a bit dry. My voice might be getting a bit hoarse, as mine is right now, or we might actually have a dry mouth, and we ignore that. And we don't realize that's actually thirst. In some cases, we also desire to limit our urination. Think about a long road trip, for example. You're not sure where the rest stop is going to be for getting out and using the washroom. You might decide to not drink any fluid. Or because you don't want to be up in the middle of the night, you might stop drinking fluids in the afternoon. So there's some reasons why we might decide to stop that fluid intake, because we don't want to have urination happening at certain times. With respect to seniors care, there has been some research to show why individuals who are living in these environments, so long-term care homes, assisted living, retirement homes, might be drinking less than we would want them to drink. And just a note that 1 in 5 residents in long-term care will experience a dehydration event every year. I'm just going to take a sip of water while I'm thinking about it. So some of the key reasons that older adults in seniors care do not drink enough are those that's on the slide. Excuse me. Now I've got a tickle. Excuse me. So older adults could forget how to drink or forget that they need to drink. They might have a swallowing problem that limits what they can drink in terms of fluid, might be thickening or versus a regular fluid. They might be what we call sippers, people that just take a very small volume of fluid. Excuse me for my tickle. They might have physical challenges with eating or drinking. They might be afraid of incontinence, and they might also be at the end of life. So on this slide, we have an indication of some of the research strategies that have been used to increase fluid intake. And we'll go into detail a little bit more on the next slide as well. Note, however, many of these strategies that we've been looking around to increase fluid intake in older adults are based in the seniors care environment. And much of the evidence is actually quite poor around this. It's really hard to study fluid intake in older adults. Diverse strategies have been offered as ways to improve older adults' fluid intake. And what we recognize now is probably many strategies together are needed to address the barriers to fluid intake in older adults. So this is a bit of a busy slide, so I'll try to walk you through it. So again, this is based on research that has been done in seniors care, typically long-term care homes. So access with respect to a reason why someone might not be drinking enough, we can think about in a seniors care environment to make sure we offer fluids frequently. So having, for example, a trolley that brings their own drinks to people in the environment. You could also have hydration stations, so places where there's a jug of water, for example, and glasses that someone can use. Carrying a water bottle around is another way to improve your access to fluid, or having a cup of tea with you when you have that tickle in your throat. Also, making it a habit, because people that forget to drink, we need to think about how we can build it into their day so it's automatic. So we could pair it up with a routine. Think about when you get up in the morning, if you had a glass of water or a jug of water beside your bed, that might stimulate you to drink. When you take your medications, take a full glass of water rather than a small amount. Offer a drink with some key routines. For example, if you're going out for a walk, offering a drink to other folks that are there so they make sure they're hydrated is a way to make it a habit, and they think about drinking when they're doing that specific activity. Drinking with others as well is a way to make it a habit. Going down for coffee, for example, on a daily basis and drinking with others. There's something called mimicry that's been studied as well, specific to persons living with dementia. We know that older adults with dementia may have specific eating challenges. And we know that if we have someone drinking in front of them, they're more likely to also pick up their cup and drink as well. You might have actually seen this with yourself as well when you're on virtual environments such as this or in other company. When someone touches a cup or picks up a food item, the other person is also more likely to eat and drink. Finally, using things like preferred cups that allow people to feel comfortable when they're drinking is key. There's often a lack of awareness, as I noted already, about how much we should be drinking. So education is important for not only older adults, but their family members and those that care for them. And using reminders again, like having a glass by the bedside with water in it. So when you get up in the morning, first thing, sitting on the side of the bed, you can have a glass of water. If people ignore their thirst signals, what's key is to learn those cues. We often just are overriding them, if you will, ignoring them. But also you can make drinking a habit. So basically not waiting to feel thirsty to drink. Pair drinking with other routines again, such as meals, maybe having a glass of water before the meal happens, maybe a half an hour before the meal, or with your medications. For those people that avoid urination or fear incontinence, again, education on the importance of hydration, why we need to drink enough, and provide and plan for washroom access. Physical challenges, think about easy to handle cups, maybe perhaps using straws to support people drinking from a glass, and then providing eating and drinking assistance to support that individual will be important. If a person has a swallowing problem, identify those preferred thickened fluids and high fluid foods that they can consume that can support their hydration. And finally, those people that are sippers, they just naturally consume a small volume of fluid, have them drinking with others, carry a water bottle around and make a goal for how much they will drink during the day, or focus on preferred beverages, things they like to drink. So I want to end off now with talking about some of the work that my lab is doing. So we've been doing quite a bit of work in this area for about 4 years now. We started with having a think tank around hydration strategies for seniors care. We actually started this work before COVID-19, but actually carried it on during that time frame and identified how seniors care environments could improve the access to fluid during COVID-19 outbreaks. As well, we have done some work around identifying feasible and effective interventions specific to long-term care. We recognize that environment has its own challenges and stressors, which can impact fluid intake. And we've worked around developing those feasibility strategies to think about a program of research that I'll talk about in just a second. We've also looked at what vessels might be preferred by older adults. We found that things that are lightweight, easy to handle, a large enough handle here on the cup so you can put 3 fingers in, that's ideal. And people like that sort of vessel to drink from. And then finally, we've been working towards developing a multi-component strategy for long-term care. We've done 2 studies in this, or sorry, 1 study in this area. We're doing a second right now. The first was called Wet Your Whistle with Water. It was based on grassroots strategies developed by team members in seniors care about what they thought would improve hydration. We rolled those strategies out and saw that they could be readily implemented by homes. We expanded that to now 7 strategies called Promote, which I can talk a little bit more about if people have questions around it. But this strategy is trying to overcome some of the challenges of W3, making sure that it's pandemic proof in terms of the types of things that can be used to promote hydration in older adults. So what are some tips to improving your hydration? Select drinks you enjoy. First off, drink with other people. That will help to improve your fluid intake. Carry around a water bottle. Find one that you find comfortable to hold in your hand, easy to drink from, is the right volume for you. It's not too heavy. Enjoy fluid with rich foods as well. Drink in between meals. It's an opportune time to make sure you get enough hydration. And also make drinking fluids part of your routine. With medications, for example, at the beginning of the day, when you brush your teeth, or other routines that you do every day. So to recap, water is essential for life. Your requirement is individual to you. There's many reasons why we don't drink enough. Some of them are just around access issues or not thinking about it. And specific to seniors that live in care environments, they might have other reasons why they're not drinking enough, like forgetting to drink or having physical challenges. Consider those reasons that you are trying to overcome those barriers and develop new behaviors so that you drink enough. Seniors in care are especially prone to dehydration, and so we need to work towards improving the eating and dining environment and in-between meals snacks to promote hydration for these folks. There are research-based strategies available, but we need more research that shows these strategies to be effective. And my hope is that our lab is working towards that with the Promote strategy that we're working on right now. So that we'll just finish up some acknowledgements. Key, I want to acknowledge the Nutrition Aging Lab and specifically my students here that are listed. They were very involved in developing the Promote and W3 education materials, and some of the slides and the material for the slides today came from their work. If you'd like to contact us, the Nutrition Aging Lab, we have a Twitter account as well as myself, and then my email. So we'll leave it there with any questions you may have.
Okay, thanks so much, Heather. We do have some questions that have come in. So the first here is, does time of day matter for hydration, or should it be fairly steady?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't think there's any specific time of day that's better to be hydrated at, but I would agree that you want to spread your fluid intake out throughout the day. You don't want to drink 2 liters all at once and then not drink anything else during the day. Our body doesn't work like that, right? You're constantly using water in your body all day long, so you need to replenish it.
And what about first thing in the morning? I've heard you should drink the most, like right when you wake up.
I think drinking at that point, one, you've been asleep all night, your body's been processing materials, making waste. It's a perfect time to make sure you have a full glass of water. You might have even had your mouth open when you're breathing, so you're a little bit dry. You probably feel it in your throat and your mouth. So absolutely, it's a perfect time to drink. But I would suggest it's not the only time to drink, right? So keep drinking throughout the day.
Okay, the next question is, do people actually drink more when they're using a straw, or is that a myth?
I think that's a myth. It really depends what you're drinking as well, quite frankly. If you're drinking a milkshake through a straw, it can be actually very hard to do. And some individuals have a hard time drawing up. They need enough, lung capacity and strength in their mouth to draw up through a straw. For persons that actually have swallowing difficulties, sometimes we don't want them to drink through a straw because it can happen very quickly. And that might be where this question is coming from. So individuals, if you've got a thin fluid, like a glass of water, for example, and you put a very large bore straw in it, the volume that's delivered is very quick if they have a good suction, right? That can load their mouth too much and cause a choking episode because they have too much volume all at once and they can't control what we call that bolus of fluid. So that would be one reason why you might not want to have straws.
Okay. The next question is a larger cup always better for hydration?
So that's a good question. So the research would suggest that if you give people a volume of water, they're more likely to drink it, right? But it has to be easy to access still. So you can't drink what's not offered, first off, right? So if we're offering wee little glasses that are 75 mils, it's going to feel like we're drinking a lot because we have to keep refilling that. So if you have a larger, this is about 300 mils, this mug here, and I'll drink it all. I can tell you that probably by the time I, finish up our conversation today. If I had a much smaller volume of cup, I wouldn't drink as much. So it's an obvious strategy to increase hydration. In seniors care, where the offers might be less frequent, this is a strategy to try to promote fluid intake. On the flip side, though, are these people that are called sippers. And we don't know enough about them that if you give them a large glass of fluid, they might say, oh, that's too much for me, and they not drink at all. So there really hasn't been enough research, quite frankly, around whom might benefit from that strategy to know how to target it. But in general, I would say I think it's a worthwhile strategy to start with. If a person can handle the cup and not spill it, and it stimulates them to drink more, and then you don't have to offer it as frequently, it's probably worth trying to see if it works.
Okay, makes sense. So the next question is, how much would an average older adult need to drink to overhydrate?
Oh, so about 4 to 5 liters a day. Yeah. So again, it's rather individual, and you don't really know it until you do a blood test to determine that someone's overhydrated. But basically, they get so confused and disarrayed, they stop drinking and eating, right? And that's how it then works through its system. But it's about 4 to 5 liters a day.
Okay. What symptoms of dehydration require medical intervention?
Yeah, and so this is a great question. So I think if people are chronically dehydrated, getting into problems with urinary tract infections, for example, or constipation, that is a medical intervention, perhaps, to provide either medications to support that constipation, or in terms of UTI, pushing fluids to make sure they're getting enough fluid into their system and clearing out the infection that they have. When someone is very dry, the rule of thumb is if someone's dehydrated quickly, you want to rehydrate quickly. So let's say, for example, you work in a hospital environment and someone has come in with a trauma and they've lost blood. Immediately, the first thing you do is put an IV in that person to rehydrate the body, basically to give the body volume of fluid for blood circulation. Because if you collapse your circulation, you're gone, right? And so how quickly dehydration happens impacts how quickly we want to respond to it. Most older adults in seniors care do not have a rapid decrease in their fluid. It's more of a slow decline. So that means we can slowly increase the fluid intake to meet those needs. So it's usually not a crisis situation unless there's been some sort of trauma and blood loss to an individual. I think when we have someone vomiting and having diarrhea with a flu or some other flu-like symptoms that are ongoing for more than a day, that's a serious situation with an older adult, can get into significant challenges then. So we want to rehydrate quickly if we can. And there's a variety of medical interventions that can be done, pushing fluids if they can keep them down, but also there's something called hypodermoclysis, where they put fluid in the subcutaneous tissue in the body rather than into a vein to slowly hydrate the body.
Okay, we might have time for one more. So this is from someone working in long-term care, and they are wondering, how can we improve hydration for people who take thickened fluids? What are strategies we can use to encourage fluid intake?
Yeah, and so thickened fluids, we believe that the hydration that is in the fluid is similar to what we would expect to see in a smoothie or pudding in terms of the fluid release. So it's about 80 to 90%. So the thickened fluid itself does not cause dehydration. What happens is people may not like the texture, or they're not being offered it as frequently. So I think we tend to see that especially in care environments, they'll get thickened fluids at meals. They may not get thickened fluids though offered between meals. And so that's an area that we can improve on for sure. So trying to make sure thickened fluids are available outside of mealtime to make sure that there is the hydration being available. Often what's thickened can be only 125 mils too. It's often a small volume. So think about a larger volume being thickened. A lot of the time though, as I said, persons who have dysphagia and swallowing problems who require thickened fluids don't like the feel of it in their mouth. They might get tired of the flavors. So thinking about how we can still offer safe fluids that give them preferences is a key thing. So what fluids might they be more likely to like maybe it's a diet pop, for example, that's thickened, would give them more interest in drinking it. Then finally, the last thing to think about is hydration through food. So identifying those foods that are higher in fluid content, they're part of what we call the food matrix. The water doesn't come out, right? Like cottage cheese, yogurt. Emphasizing those foods in the diet of a person who has dysphagia can also significantly help their dehydration.
Okay, great. So I think
my apologies, folks, for my scratchy voice and sneezing. Sorry about that. But
no worries. That time of year.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so thank you, Heather, for your presentation and thorough insight into hydration challenges and ways to boost our fluid intake. We really appreciate you spending time with us today. I would like to remind everyone that a recording will be available after the session. We'll try to send it out to everyone who registered probably early next week, and it will be up on the website. And so for everyone who joined us today, thanks again for coming. If you are interested in what other webinars the RIA has coming up, please check out the events page on our website, which is www.the-ria.ca. Great. Okay, bye everyone. Bye, Heather.
Bye-bye.